I bought a ranch to escape the city life, and ended up at war with a rogue HOA president who tried to fine me for fees from before I even lived there. What she didn't know? I don't back down, and I've got a goat. This is how I took her, and the entire fake HOA, down. One legal move at a time. Let's take a step back and start from where it all began. When I bought my dream ranch, I thought I was finally escaping the chaos. No more traffic, no more nosy neighbors, no more rules about lawn length or what color your front door could be, just peace, wide open land, and the freedom to breathe. Or so I thought. 2 weeks after I moved in, I got a letter taped, yes, taped, to my front gate, not mailed, not placed gently in my mailbox, taped like a warning note in a horror movie. The paper was crinkled from the sun, and the ink had started to bleed. But the bold, underlined title at the top still screamed at me. Delinquent HOA fees. Final warning. Now, you have to understand something. I didn't even know there was an HOA. This was a ranch, 10 acres, out in the country. The closest gas station is 15 minutes away, and my nearest neighbor can barely be seen from the porch. But apparently, the entire area, what they called Whispering Pines Community, had an HOA tucked into its deed, and somehow I was part of it. The kicker? The letter said I owed $3,198.62. My heart sank. I've never missed a bill in my life. I triple-checked the paperwork when I bought the place. How could I owe nearly $4,000 already? I'd only been here for 14 days. I immediately went into my office, pulled out the closing documents, and started flipping through the contract. No mention of fees owed. No liens. Nothing. The property was clean. That's when I noticed a tiny line in the letter I hadn't caught before. This balance was carried over from the previous owner and is now the responsibility of the current deed holder. Excuse me? Now, I'm no lawyer, but I'm also not an idiot. If this was about the previous owner, why was I being fined? I called the number on the letter, and the voicemail greeting was exactly what I feared. Hi, this is Karen with Whispering Pines HOA. Please leave a message after the beep. And remember, dues are due on the 1st. Karen, of course, I didn't leave a message. I emailed instead. Because I wanted everything in writing, I wrote, Hi Karen, I recently moved into property address and received a notice regarding unpaid HOA dues from a previous owner. Can you please provide a full breakdown of these charges, as well as documentation showing why these are being assigned to me? 3 hours later, she responded, Not with an explanation, not with a breakdown, not even with a greeting. All dues remain with the property. As current owner, you are responsible. Pay within 10 days or legal proceedings will begin. Karen. I'm gonna be honest, I laughed. Legal proceedings? Over $4,000 in someone else's debt? Still, I wasn't about to ignore it. I emailed her back asking for the specific bylaws that stated the responsibility transferred to the new owner. Her reply? It's not our job to educate you. Read your deed. This is your problem now. That's when it started to sink in. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a setup. And the person setting the trap was named Karen. I started asking around. Called the real estate agent who helped me buy the place. She was shocked. She said the HOA was almost completely inactive during the sale. Just a name on a form. The previous owner never mentioned fees, and no one flagged it at closing. I looked up Whispering Pines HOA online. No website, no portal, just a Facebook page run by, you guessed it, Karen. And from what I could see, it was basically a shrine to herself. Dozens of posts like, Reminder, trash cans must be stored out of sight at all times. Let's keep our neighborhood beautiful. To the resident at 216 Brookside, You know who you are, mow your lawn. The kicker? These posts were getting no likes, no comments, no interaction. It was a digital ghost town, except for Karen. I realized this wasn't just about fees. This was about control, about someone who had way too much time on her hands and a little bit of power, and now wanted to make me her next target. But what Karen didn't realize was that I'm not the kind of guy who rolls over. I didn't move out to the country to be bullied. If she wanted a fight over fake fees, she was going to get one. And I was going to make sure I fought it smart. The deeper I dug, the weirder it got. I decided to request the HOA's financial records. Under most HOA bylaws, assuming they're real, members have a legal right to view budgets, fee breakdowns, and meeting minutes. So I emailed Karen again, this time using very formal language and citing the state's HOA transparency laws. Her response? There are no open records for individual homeowners. These requests must go through the board. Except Karen was the board. I checked the latest county records, and according to what I found, Whispering Pines HOA only had 3 listed officers: Karen, president, Karen's sister, treasurer, and a mysterious name I later discovered was Karen's ex-husband, secretary. And guess what? They hadn't filed a financial disclosure in over 5 years. This was getting shady. Fast, I spoke again to Mike, the neighbor who nearly spit his coffee. He invited me over, handed me a beer, and told me to sit down because he had stories. Apparently, a few years back, Karen tried to fine a family for installing solar panels, claiming they disrupted the uniform look of the neighborhood. The family lawyered up and won. Karen was humiliated, but instead of backing off, she doubled down on her role as HOA queen, started printing her own fine notices, threatening people with small claims court, even posted pictures of violators on the HOA Facebook page like it was a neighborhood watch group. Most people ignored her, but those who didn't, those who pushed back, ended up with nuisance complaints, anonymous reports to code enforcement, even surprise inspections from the county. Mike said it best. She's not just a Karen, she's a tactical Karen. And now she had set her sights on me. I decided to go full Sherlock. I pulled every public document I could find about the HOA. Most of it was from 20 years ago. The original bylaws were clearly meant for a different time, when Whispering Pines was a tiny, gated subdivision of cookie-cutter homes. Over time, the area had expanded, homes had been sold off, and the community turned into a patchwork of ranches, cabins, and custom homes, like mine. Yet somehow, Karen was still clinging to that original HOA framework like it was gospel. I called a real estate attorney, told him the situation. He laughed. Not because it was funny, but because he'd heard of Karen before. She's notorious in your county, he said. She's been trying to revive that HOA for years, but it has no legal standing unless all homeowners vote to reactivate it. And you didn't. He looked through the paperwork and confirmed what I suspected. I wasn't responsible for the previous owner's debts, and even if I was, the HOA hadn't followed any of the proper channels for collections. No liens, no certified notices, just angry letters and vague threats. The lawyer gave me a list of options. One was to sue, another was to formally request arbitration, but his best advice? Push back with facts. She thrives on fear. Remove that, and she'll crumble. So I drafted a reply. It was direct, professional, brutal in the calmest way possible. Dear Karen, after reviewing the Whispering Pines HOA documents and consulting with legal counsel, I have found no enforceable bylaw or state statute that requires me to assume the previous owner's unpaid dues. Any attempt to collect this debt from me, without proper legal standing, may constitute harassment and fraudulent collection practices. This will be my final communication on the matter unless further contact is necessary for legal defense. Regards, the ranch owner you shouldn't have messed with. I hit send and waited. Nothing. No reply for a day, then 2, then a week. I thought maybe that was it. Maybe the letter scared her off. But this was Karen. On the 8th day, I got a certified envelope in the mail. Inside, a formal notice of violation for an unauthorized structure on the premises. It included a photo of my chicken coop. Apparently, Karen had decided my chickens were a code violation. This wasn't over. She was just getting started. I wasn't going to let her intimidate me. The next morning, I printed out every HOA document I could find. I highlighted the parts that contradicted her claims, clipped them to a folder, and drove straight to her house. I knew where she lived. She made sure everyone did. Her front yard was a shrine to surveillance, signs reading, "Private property," "You are being watched," and 24-hour neighborhood patrol lined the walkway like angry little soldiers. I knocked, hard, no answer. I knocked again, and then I heard it, a rustling behind the curtain. She was watching. "Karen, I know you're home," I said, loud enough for her Ring camera to pick up. "We need to talk." Nothing. So I left the folder on her welcome mat with a sticky note that said, "You're not above the law. I'm not the one." I didn't even get back to my gate before my phone rang. She didn't say hello. She just launched, "Are you threatening me on my own property?" I kept calm. "Nope. Just delivering some light reading. I'd recommend page 4, she snapped. "You have no idea who you're dealing with. I've been running this HOA for over a decade. I can fine you for every day that chicken coop stays up. That structure was never approved. You're in violation." I interrupted, "Karen, you don't have the authority. You don't even have quorum on your so-called board. And I've already spoken to an attorney." Silence. Then, "We'll see about that." Click. She hung up. I wasn't shaken, but I was boiling. I walked inside, grabbed my camera, and started photographing everything on my property. Then I took a drive and documented all the other violations Karen had ignored. I compiled it all in a massive Google Drive folder labeled Karen Gate. And just in time, too, 2 days later, I received an official-looking letter from the HOA Legal Committee. Except there was no letterhead, no return address, and it was riddled with typos. It accused me of obstruction, non-compliance, and malicious intent to undermine the authority of the community. I couldn't believe it. She was making up charges now. I brought the letter to my lawyer. He nearly spit his coffee. "This isn't even legal stationery," he said. "And this committee she's referencing doesn't exist. You've got her on fraud, harassment, and potentially abuse of process if she keeps escalating." I smiled, because now I had a plan. I asked the lawyer to draft a cease and desist letter citing her personal liability if she continued issuing false notices. It also demanded she provide proof of any official vote that reinstated the HOA under state law. We sent it certified. 3 days later, she replied, not to me, but with a new violation notice taped to my fence. This one? "Grass too long in drainage ditch. Fire hazard?" I laughed out loud. That same afternoon, I caught her walking her tiny dog past my property. I walked out to the edge of my driveway, phone in hand, filming. "Karen, got a second?" She froze. "Don't you dare record me without consent." "It's legal in this state," I said, smiling, "especially when I'm filming my own property. But while I've got you here, care to explain the drainage ditch fire hazard?" She started spewing nonsense about brush control and emergency vehicle access. I just kept nodding and recording. When she realized I wasn't backing down, she turned on her heel and stormed off. but not before yelling, "You'll regret this." That was the last straw. I decided to go public. I uploaded a post to the local community forum outlining everything: photos, letters, the bogus notices, and screenshots from other neighbors confirming her harassment. I kept it factual, respectful, and airtight. It blew up. Dozens of comments poured in. People shared stories of similar harassment. One guy said she fined him $100 for leaving his porch light on during a full moon. Another said she tried to evict his goats for being too loud. Within 24 hours, Karen shut down the HOA Facebook page. Within 48, I received an anonymous message. "You're doing God's work." But I wasn't done yet. After seeing the public response, I realized something important. Karen had built her power on silence. She depended on people being too busy, too polite, or too afraid to fight back. That was her strategy: intimidate, isolate, and outlast. But now, the silence was broken, and I was building an army. I spent the next few days turning my Google Drive folder into a bulletproof case file. Screenshots of every violation letter, a timeline of events, scans of public records, recordings, and links to state laws she had clearly ignored. I even added a tab called Other Victims, where I documented every neighbor story submitted through the forum thread. It read like a horror novel. One elderly couple said Karen demanded they remove a bird bath because it was attracting pests. A single mom claimed she was threatened with daily fines for leaving a stroller on her porch. And someone else shared a letter from 2019 accusing them of storing unsightly materials. It was a recycling bin. The more I read, the more furious I became. So I called the lawyer again and asked, "How do we end her?" He laughed, but I was serious. "There are two ways," he said. "You can formally challenge the HOA's legitimacy, or you can file a harassment complaint directly against her. Do both, and you'll bury her." That's when I started preparing a formal petition. I typed up a letter to dissolve the HOA based on failure to maintain legal status, lack of elections, and abusive enforcement. I listed every statute she'd violated. Then I started collecting signatures. I didn't go door to door. I didn't have to. The forum had gone viral. All I had to do was post the PDF. Within 3 days, I had 37 signatures, out of 49 homeowners. That was more than enough to trigger a vote to disband the HOA entirely. Karen didn't know it yet, but her empire was on a countdown. Meanwhile, the cease and desist we'd sent finally got a formal response, through a real attorney this time, or so I thought. The letter was on law firm letterhead, but when my lawyer called to verify, the firm said Karen wasn't a client, and that the letter was a template she had downloaded from the internet. I kid you not, she had printed a fake legal response. That was it. My lawyer filed an official complaint with the county: fraud, misrepresentation, and potential unauthorized practice of law. And while that was processing, I made a call to the local paper. They had a reporter who covered community disputes, HOAs, zoning fights, that kind of thing. I explained everything and offered full documentation. She was stunned. "This is way bigger than the usual lawn drama," she said. "We'll run it." The article dropped 2 days later. The HOA that wasn't. Residents expose rogue board president's phantom rules. They quoted neighbors. They posted photos of the fake notices. They even interviewed the county clerk, who confirmed the HOA hadn't submitted anything legal in over a decade. Karen's name was in the headline. That night, the HOA Facebook group came back online, briefly. She posted a massive wall of text about how she was the victim of a targeted campaign by a hostile homeowner, claimed I was endangering the harmony of the neighborhood, and then ended it with "legal action is pending." But no one was buying it anymore. Under her post were hundreds of comments, most of them just the popcorn emoji. One neighbor replied, "Your reign is over, Karen. Pack it up." The next morning, she deactivated her account again. But that wasn't enough for me. I wasn't just looking for a retreat. I wanted a full surrender. Just when I thought Karen was finally backing down, she flipped the script. The signs disappeared. The Facebook group vanished. The harassment paused. It felt like a retreat. But I knew better. Karen wasn't the type to go quietly. She was the kind who'd go down swinging, even if it meant throwing punches in the dark. And then it began again. Subtly, a code inspector showed up at my gate. Friendly guy, said he got an anonymous tip about unsafe electrical wiring in an accessory structure. I asked if the tip came with a picture or address. He laughed and said, "Nope, just a handwritten note that said, 'Red Barn, possible fire hazard.'" I gave him a tour. Everything was up to code. He even complimented my setup. Before he left, he said, "You wouldn't believe how many of these we get from this area. Same handwriting, same type of claims." We both knew who sent it. Over the next 2 weeks, it happened 3 more times. One for my septic system, one for noise complaints about my rooster. And the last, a ridiculous report about illegal livestock. That one made me laugh. I had 6 chickens and a very old, very lazy goat. This wasn't HOA harassment anymore. It was personal. But here's the thing. Karen made a critical mistake. She moved her attacks into the public system. That meant paper trails. That meant accountability. So I started filing Freedom of Information requests. Every call, every tip, every citation. I wanted it all documented. And it worked. The reports matched the timeline of her HOA nonsense exactly. Some were even signed with her real name. Others came from a fake alias that used her email address as a recovery contact. It was sloppy and legally actionable. My lawyer smiled when I showed him, "She's basically gift-wrapped your harassment case." So while we finalized the HOA dissolution paperwork, we opened a separate civil case for targeted harassment. And to make things worse for Karen, I filed a complaint with the County Ethics Board, attaching every report, every false claim, and the quote from the inspector. I wasn't trying to ruin her life. I was just trying to end her campaign. But Karen? She decided to escalate. She started flyering the neighborhood. Real, physical flyers, on windshields, mailboxes. She even stuck one on my gate, printed in all caps and bold red letters. "Warning! Homeowner at my address is attempting to dismantle your community protections. Your property values are at risk." I tore it down, scanned it, and added it to Karen Gate. That was the last straw for the neighbors, too. Mike, the guy who first warned me, rallied everyone for a second meeting. This time, we held it at his place, and even more people showed up. A few brought the flyers Karen had posted on their cars. "She's lost it," one neighbor said. "This is harassment." Another neighbor, who hadn't spoken up before, stood up and said, "She tried this on my wife 3 years ago. We stayed quiet. We thought it would blow over. It didn't." We voted then and there to fast-track the HOA dissolution and finalize the complaint with the sheriff's office. 2 days later, a deputy knocked on Karen's door with a notice. She slammed the door in his face. But the notice was delivered. And now, it was official. She wasn't just some annoying neighborhood figure. She was a documented harasser, a rogue enforcer of rules she had no right to create. And word got out fast. I was done playing defense. It was time to strike back. Karen had spent months trying to weaponize rules that didn't exist. But I had a theory. People that obsessed with control often think they're untouchable. And if she'd spent this long enforcing fake rules, I'd bet good money she wasn't following the real ones herself. So I started digging. And what I found? Absolute gold. First, her fence. That thing was a fortress, 8 feet tall with pointed iron tips. Illegal under county ordinance unless you apply for a special variance. No record of a permit. Next, I looked into her property taxes, public record. Turns out, she'd claimed her house as a dual-use home office and received tax deductions under her LLC, which had been inactive for 3 years. That's tax fraud, or at least close enough to get attention. Then there was the shed, or should I say, the guest house. Tucked behind her main home was a fully finished outbuilding. Windows, AC unit, satellite dish, on Zillow. Her home was listed with a single structure. But in her 2020 post, yes, she blogged, she wrote about how she loved escaping to her writing retreat. On weekends? That writing retreat? Totally unpermitted. I wasn't going to report her just yet. Not out of mercy. Out of strategy. I printed everything, highlighted the violations, created a new tab in the Karen Gate folder labeled counteroffensive. But before I acted, I needed confirmation. I called in a favor from a local contractor who'd done some minor work on my barn. He drove by and took a look at her back lot. His verdict? That's definitely livable space. No way she filed that. Now I had leverage. But this wasn't about revenge. I didn't want to stoop to her level. What I wanted was exposure. I emailed the same reporter who had written the original article. I told her I had new information. She was interested immediately. "Let's meet," she said. "This sounds big." We sat down at a diner, and I laid it all out. Documents, maps, inspection codes. Her eyes widened as she read through each page. "You have her in multiple violations," she said. "This is no longer a quirky HOA story. This is corruption." The new article dropped 2 days later. Whistleblower uncovers violations by self-appointed HOA president. It included photos, tax records, and a quote from the contractor. It was polite but damning. No accusations, just facts. But the facts painted a picture. Karen was not who she claimed to be, and she'd been hiding her own infractions while publicly humiliating others for made-up ones. The fallout was immediate. Neighbors were furious. One even started a petition to have her fined retroactively by the county. Another called the tip line for code enforcement. The same inspector who came to check on my illegal goat showed up at her house 3 days later. Only this time, he wasn't laughing. He stayed for nearly an hour, took photos, measured the fence, knocked on the door multiple times with no answer. When he left, he placed a bright orange notice on her gate. Notice of investigation. County Ordinance Review. Poetic justice. But the best part? She couldn't tear it down without being caught. Everyone in the neighborhood saw it. Some even took photos and posted them online with hashtags like Karengate and fence fraud. That week, I got a card in the mail. No return address, just one sentence inside. "You're playing chess. She's still playing checkers." It all came to a head one Thursday morning. I got a call from my lawyer. They've scheduled the hearing. Karen had filed a formal objection to the HOA's dissolution, even after the county approved it. And now we had a court date. She was trying one last Hail Mary to undo everything. I wasn't worried. I had everything documented, but I knew what this really was. Her last shot at holding on to power. This was her Super Bowl. So I prepped like I was going to war. I compiled every file, chronological evidence, screenshots, recorded calls, statements from neighbors, a printed copy of the fake legal notice, even the illegal goat citation. I walked into that courthouse with a binder so thick, it had a name, The Karen Chronicles. She showed up in full force. Designer handbag, blazer, hair curled like she was filming a reality show. She brought a man in a cheap suit she claimed was her attorney. The judge wasn't impressed. "Ma'am, is this gentleman licensed to practice in this county?" He wasn't. The judge raised an eyebrow and told him to sit in the gallery. Karen would be representing herself. What followed was the most chaotic 45 minutes of my life. Karen ranted about lawlessness, property values, and dangerous ruralism. She even said I was leading a hostile homeowner uprising to defund the HOA. I swear she almost cried when she read from a printout of my neighborhood letter, claiming it emotionally distressed her. Then it was my turn. I didn't rant. I didn't even raise my voice. I handed the judge my binder and let the facts speak. Fraudulent notices, unlawful citations, evidence of fake violations, multiple witness statements, tax fraud documentation, every ordinance she had violated, highlighted and sourced. The judge was silent for a long time after reviewing it. Then he leaned forward and said, "Ms. Karen, do you have anything to refute this?" She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. He ruled in less than 5 minutes. "The petition for objection is denied. The HOA dissolution stands. This matter is closed." Boom. It was over. I walked out of that courtroom lighter than air. Months of stress, tension, and fear, gone in a single gavel drop. But there was one more twist. As I stepped into the parking lot, a reporter with a microphone walked up. "Are you the homeowner who took down the Whispering Pines HOA?" she asked. I paused, smiled, and said, "No, I'm the one who finally made it honest." After Karen left, the neighborhood changed. Not overnight, not dramatically, but there was a noticeable shift in the air. People waved more, kids rode their bikes farther, front porches that had been silent for years started to see life again. Wind chimes, flower pots, welcome mats. It was like the whole place had been holding its breath. And finally exhaled, I walked the perimeter of my ranch one morning and realized just how quiet things had become. Not in a lonely way, in a peaceful way. No more surprise inspectors, no more threats taped to my gate. Just birds, the wind, and the occasional cluck of my chickens. Funny how it all started with a letter about fees I didn't owe. I thought back to that day. The confusion, the disbelief. I could have paid it. I could have ignored it. But something in me knew this wasn't just about money. It was about standing up to someone who thrived on fear and silence. And now, that silence belonged to us. The HOA was gone, officially dissolved. No more fines, no more made-up ordinances, no more one-woman government. In its place, we started something better. A simple email group for community updates, shared tools, shared resources, even a neighborhood BBQ. Mike brought ribs, Janine made peach cobbler. I brought goat cheese, courtesy of the illegal livestock who was now the unofficial mascot of Whispering Pines. We laughed, swapped stories, and toasted to fresh starts. For the first time since I moved in, I felt rooted, like I wasn't just living on the land. I was part of it, part of a community, a real one. I keep the original, final notice from Karen in a drawer in my office, not out of spite, out of gratitude. It reminds me of how far we've come, of what one voice can do when it refuses to stay quiet. To anyone out there dealing with an HOA tyrant or any petty authority figure trying to control through intimidation, this story is for you. Don't let them win by default. You don't need to be a lawyer. You don't need to be rich. You just need to document, stay calm, and let the truth be louder than the threats. And if you ever feel like it's too much, Just remember one thing. Even a single homeowner with a stubborn goat can bring down a Karen. If you like this story, do me a favor. Hit the like button, drop a comment with your favorite part, and subscribe for more real-life tales of everyday people pushing back and taking back what's theirs. This was my HOA horror story, and my ranch is finally quiet again.